Okay, Hallie, we're ready to get started.
Thank you and good evening to everyone. Before I introduce to you our webcast speaker for this evening, Dorothy Moyer, I'd like to take a quick minute just to introduce you to my organization, Equine Land Conservation Resource. I've included both our mission and vision statements on the screen for you. Some of you may already be familiar with ELCR and may have even joined us on past webcasts we have done in conjunction with My Horse University and E-Extension Horses Quest. What's really most important for you to know about ELCR is the organization has been around for about 16 years, and it remains the only national organization that works to not only protect land, but also access to land for horses and all equine-related activities through a variety of educational program activities, just like tonight's webinar, for example. The next screen, please. This is a screenshot of our homepage at elcr.org, which shows the 6 core areas of our work and our corresponding resource library. If you were to click on Equine Access to Private Land in the lower left-hand corner, for example, at the bottom of the screen, that would take you directly to our online resources pertaining to riding on private land. So after tonight's webcast, if you want some more information, please feel free to visit our website, elcr.org, and access our resource library. In addition, you will find contact information on this website, so if you have any questions on equine land-related issues, please feel free at any time to contact our staff here. We'd be more than happy to help you with your local land issues. So now it's my pleasure to introduce to you tonight's presenter, Dot Moyer. Dorothy Moyer is based in Tryon, North Carolina area with a lifelong interest in horses, agriculture, and nature. Dorothy has represented and served on the boards of many community-based nonprofits during her career. Now retired, she focuses her efforts on preserving land and equestrian access. She is an active member of Carolina Mountain Land Conservancy, the Polk County Soil and Water District Advisory Committee, and she served on the board of the Foothills Equestrian Trails Association and focuses on its easement program to protect the local trails. We are fortunate to have Dorothy serving on the board of directors here at Equine Land Conservation Resource. And tonight, she has kindly agreed to lend her expertise with private trails for this evening's webcast. Dorothy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd really like to thank My Horse University for such a wonderful opportunity to talk to you all about something that I've cared about virtually my entire life. I've been riding for over 55 years and primarily on private property. So while I'm not an expert, I certainly have seen a lot of what goes into making that successful or unsuccessful. Before we get started, before I start on the PowerPoint presentation, I believe you should have a poll that's on your screen asking you some questions that we'd really like to get some input from you. And if you all could just take a minute and look at those poll questions and answer them, I'll just ramble a little bit about what my interests have been. I grew up on a large farm in Virginia, Charlottesville, Virginia, and we rode all over the place without a care in the world as to where we were and whether we had any permission from anybody. Same thing pretty much up in Pennsylvania. But when I moved down to North Carolina, things got a little bit more difficult. And as time went on, land just started disappearing. Even though there were lots and lots of trails, people started building houses on them, and subdivisions popped up, and it really became a big problem. And I ended up being the last person in my part of the neighborhood to be riding, and that just wasn't working out too well. So fortunately, there was an area not far from me that was well known for its trails, and my husband was kind enough to allow us to move the horses down there, and I started getting involved in a local trail system that had been started relatively recently. And I got involved in that, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. The first question that a lot of people have when they're talking about riding on private land is, what is the problem? We've been riding here for a long time and nobody's really ever had a problem, so why should we care about having to do all that? it's a lot of work. We just want to go out and ride. Well, what we have found in our area, we have 600 plus riders in our trail system. It's called the Foothills Equestrian Trail System in Tryon, North Carolina. And we have about 600 riders, about 150 landowners who own about 125 miles of trails. And of those 150 landowners, only about a quarter of them ride horses. So we learn really, really fast that you have to really walk a mile in those people's shoes. You have to think about what it is that they care about. And the most important thing, and I'm starting with this because I truly think this is the most important thing, is that you're not entitled to ride anywhere but your own land. So you really have to think of them like they're customers. You have to make them happy, you have to solve their problems, or you won't be riding on their land. We have a saying here, lose the attitude or lose the trails, and I cannot really emphasize that enough. We're asking an awful lot from people when we ask to ride on their property, and we're going to get into some of those things in just a minute. But you have to realize that if you want to create a trail system on other people's land, you have to create a relationship with them first. Respect, manners, gratitude, appreciation are absolutely required. Now, you wouldn't think that that would be, any great revelation, but you would be surprised at the number of riders who have ridden in a place a long time and think that they just own it, and that the landowners are just an inconvenience. And I'll go into a few funny stories in a minute, but this is really probably the basis of everything that you're going to ever run into. Always go back to it. It's the golden rule. You need to have a relationship with these people, and you need to show them the respect that they deserve as landowners. That said, where do you start? If you're going to make a trail system, obviously you need an organization, and a good organization is the key to success. ELCR's website has numerous resources for how to organize things, and I'm not going to spend time on that tonight because you can find that out. There's a couple of things cited here. One thing I will say is, if you want to be successful, there are a couple of absolute requirements. You have to choose reasonable, effective, and positive people as your leaders. That is that's just non-negotiable. People who are diplomatic, people who know how to get things done, people who are positive with other people. They're the ones that are going to make this successful. You need to define the skill sets and recruit people to fill those needs, but you have to be pretty ruthless about this. Do not try and bring everyone into the tent, because you just a lot of times end up with a food fight. So treat it like a business. Treat it like it's your business, and think about it that way, and you'll be much more likely to be successful. The other thing I would definitely tell you is to be sure that your large landowners are either represented in your organizational capacity, or you keep in constant touch with them. Your large landowners are the people that you're going to be building this system around, and they are your biggest customers. So what do you have to do first? If you're going to start a system, you really have to decide what you want to be, and that's going to really depend on the situation, your geographic situation, and the history of your area. Three of the successful models that I've seen in our area, and these can grow upon each other, they can change, but you really pretty much have to brainstorm these things and make these decisions before you go out to your constituency, which is your maybe smaller landowners, your connecting landowners. First, you can be a loose network. That's just an informal agreement between neighbors. This ordinarily works well in places that are not very dense and there's not very much development pressure. Sometimes it's a good way to start. Very little work is required, so that's an advantage. The problem with it is you don't create a really viable organization. there's no mechanism in place for you to resolve any issues. For example, who's going to maintain the trails? How do you communicate problems and issues? Rider usage, and we're going to get into that more, but that's a very, very big issue. How do riders treat the land? What are they doing? What problems are they creating for the landowner? And of course, liability. If you don't have a framework created to address these problems and the situation changes, you're really not that much further ahead. That said, it can work, it does work, and it may be a good start. Another system that we have in this area is a landowner-only system, and there are quite a number of those that are associated with equine subdivisions. We have two very large equine subdivisions in the area that have very nice trail systems, and the advantage of that is that you can have, more formal association and more more organization, and that facilitates communication and usage rules, accountability, trail maintenance, all those things. And it's sometimes easier to get landowners to create permanent easements in these smaller groupings. The problem is that there's often very limited riding potential. Even if you have 1,000 acres, you can get pretty bored riding around the same 1,000 acres. The work and expense for maintenance is concentrated on a small number of people, so that can get to be rather onerous. Some of these private systems in our area can have upwards of $1,000 a year dues for maintenance. The other problem that often happens is that people move in and then they get older and their horses become pasture ornaments. They don't ride, but they love living in their home. So what happens is the horse properties don't turn over and volunteers either age or burn out. So that can be a problem with landowner-only systems. The other issue that we have sometimes seen is this you can't use my trail if I can't use yours issues. If you're going to limit riding on your trails but want to ride on other people's trails, that always creates problems. So that's one of the issues there. But again, we have successful landowner-only systems in this area. I can't speak as well to them because I don't work with one of them, but I'm a landowner in one of them. So they have their place, and in some places that's going to be what you can do. What I do know a lot more about is open use trail systems. And these are systems where the membership is open to non-landowners. In our system, we had a very long history of open use riding in the area. The fox hunts started here. Tryon is a well-known equestrian destination. And up until the early 1990s, when we had two very big ice storms, people from all over the region came up to ride here. There were no, anybody could just ride, and it was sort of like the old days. The problem with that was that as the land did start subdividing to some extent, it created more conflict. There was no accountability. There was no one to take care of the trails. A lot of the very large landowners were getting older and really couldn't take care of their trails anymore. So, and then we had these big ice storms that took down thousands of trees, and it became really clear that unless something was organized, we were going to lose the system. The other problem was that with development pressures and people people coming in who weren't used to the history, they just automatically closed their trails off, because they just didn't like it or for whatever reason, and we'll go into some of those reasons in a minute. So what we found was that the large landowners here wanted to retain our history, and they wanted to make sure that people could still ride, but they wanted to have some rules. They wanted to have some things set up to regulate usage and to maintain trails and all those things. So we found the advantages of having this system was that you can spread the cost of this, which can get to be quite extensive, over a larger number of people. You can have more people involved, so you have more volunteers to help. the trails are often considered a community asset in a situation like this, and it spreads pride in the system by the whole community, not just by the land, not just by the riders. People in our area are very proud of saying they live in hunting country or they live on the feeder system, and our real estate agents call it our beachfront property, and it makes the land more valuable. I think that may also be true for the private trail systems, the landowner-only trail systems, but they are not anywhere near as large as our system, and that size where you can go out and do 8 different routes of a couple hours each and really never get bored is quite an advantage. The disadvantages of an open trail system is it requires a greater organization if there are more people. As I said, we have 600 riders. That's about 300 membership units. And so, you have to have a better organization, but you have more people to do it, and you have more money to do it. The other thing is that you have to consider is you need a way to limit membership to sustainable levels, and we'll talk about that just a little bit more. By the way, I forgot to mention that if you have questions, and they will pop up on my screen, if I'm going to answer them later, I won't answer them now. But I'd like to create a dialogue through this. If that is, if y'all have questions, go ahead and put them up. So, what are the issues? The issues that we found. These aren't the only issues, but the big issues. We're going to go through them. When you're starting a trail system, obviously the first issues are convincing landowners to participate. Why should they do this? And there's a whole lot of reasons. And in our case, it was pretty much a community legacy. That's not true everywhere, but you can create a legacy too. Creating something bigger than yourself is pretty powerful, especially to people who like nature and the outdoors, and who are likely to have any trails on their land. Economic development actually means something to some people. Our horses mean business in Tryon Hunt Country, and we push that, and that gives a certain amount of community support, especially small business support, and if people want to live in an area like this, they want that kind of community. Another understanding of landowners should be that if they protect the open space, it'll protect the open space and rural character to have horses around. A lot of the land around here is horse farms, and if we didn't have these trails, most of these people would not have moved here. So if the trails were to disappear and the horses were to disappear, then there wouldn't be anything quite very special about this area. The land would break up into much smaller pieces, and the quality of life of the people who live here now would suffer. And I think that means a lot to a lot of the people here. The trails, as I said, are an asset to the landowner. They increase the property values. That's been demonstrated in our area. The appraisers have said that it's a 30% upcharge to live on the trails, so you can ride right out. That's a big thing. And every real estate agent posts that they're on the feeder trail system when they've got a property for sale. Trail maintenance and upkeep is a really big deal, especially in a rural or retired population. A lot of people have these legacy trails on their property, can't take care of them themselves, but would like to see them maintained, if for no other reason than they like walking on them. And that is something that our trail system does. And there's a number of other things, recreational opportunities for landowners, help with protection and security. There's a number of people that go away for periods of time, and you get to know them, and when the horses are riding by, they can sort of see if let's say a tree came down in the middle of the roof. So people like having the horses around. And finally, the regulation of trail use is a really big one, and we'll talk more about regulation of trail use in a minute. The biggest issue for our landowners when you're first talking to people is liability, and I'm sure that's not news to anybody on this webcast. That is always the biggest problem. And unfortunately, I can't tell you an answer for it. I can tell you generally the parameters of what you should be thinking about. Liability is governed by state law. So anything I say about North Carolina may or may not be of any value in the state that you live in. So I don't really want to be very, very specific, but I can give you some general background. You need to go to an attorney experienced in tort and equine law, and your state horse counsel ought to be able to give you some names. But if you're a little bit prepared and have a general understanding of this, it's helpful. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about what we do in North Carolina. In North Carolina, like most states, we have an equine activity statute and a recreational use statute. Most of you are probably familiar with the equine activity statute because almost every state has passed it. It's the statute that has a sign that's required by law that tells you, that what the limitation on liability is. That law doesn't really change the liability. It just is more specific as to what that means. The better protective law for landowners is the recreational use statute. And again, almost every state has a recreational use statute. The recreational use statute is better because it changes the duty of care that the landowner owes the person on their property from ordinary negligence to gross negligence. In gross negligence, you have to intentionally hurt somebody or be so disregard their well-being so much that it would be considered gross negligence on your part. That is a really great position to be in. You want to be in that position. It's been allowed because it's public policy to try and encourage private landowners to allow strangers, people they don't know, to use their land for recreational use. So they get a break. They get a special liability standard, which is the same standard that they have to a trespasser. So if your state has a recreational use statute, that is something you really want to become familiar with and understand how it will work. North Carolina had one of the original ones that was passed, and it's very similar. It was very similar to what most states have. We found some issues with it, and we went to our legislators, and they created a really, really big improvement to our statute. Most places don't have that, but and I don't want to spend the whole time on this. I could be talking about this all day, but you might want to look at North Carolina's statute, see how it's different from yours, and that'll give you a feeling of the concerns that we had that we addressed in the updated statute. But just for purposes of this, you should be knowing that besides the equine activity statute, which is an ordinary negligence standard, the recreational use statute is probably going to apply to your landowners if they meet the requirements, which pretty much are that they don't get paid, okay? So anyway, the relevant questions you want to talk to your attorney about is, do you have either the equine activity statute or recreational use statute, and what protection does it offer in our state? The other thing I want to talk about is contracts or releases, which limit liability, and they can modify or take precedence over both of these laws. They are the most important thing that you can do, and we'll talk more about that later. So there's a couple questions you want to ask. Is common law tort contract preempted by equine liability and recreational use statutes in your states? Can you use both of them? What are the requirements for a valid liability release in your state? If it's unclear, is it the best strategy to use everything you can? That's what we have done. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what FEDA does, hoping it's instructive, but again, warning you that every state law is different. We have a legal savvy strategy. We create multiple high hurdles to liability. We have excellent contractual releases where our riders assume the defined risks and accept gross negligence as the standard, and the contractual releases can be upheld on summary judgment. That's very, very important. You don't have to go to a full trial on the merits if you've got a validly executed and effective release. So anyone who tells you that a release isn't worth the paper it's written on, I will respectfully disagree with that. They are used all the time. A kid can't walk out of a school without one anymore, and there's a reason for that. If you contact me, if you'd be interested in the release that FIDA uses, I'd be happy to send it to you. We don't have it on our website, but I'd be happy to send that to you. Strong liability laws. We took an active role in helping to draft new legislation to help with making sure that our landowners were protected by the recreational use statute. We also post the equine activity signs. Sometimes they work. For example, if these people are guests on your land, recreational use statute does not apply to your personal guests. It applies to people in general. So you'll want to have them out anyway. Also, people think they work, and that's 3/4 of the war there. So you'll want to put them up. Risk management to prevent accidents is probably one of the things that most that's really the most important. If you don't have any accidents, then you're not going to have any liability issues. We had to take a strong stand on this because landowners get really spooked when there's accidents. That just raises their concern level really, really high. If we don't have bad injuries, then it keeps them much happier. We have reasonable safety rules, including helmets required. It is the feeling of our organization that that's the least that we can do for landowners. We did get some pushback. I won't lie about that. We got some pushback when that first went in. I would say 95% of the people were, yeah, duh. And the other 5% were like, it's a free country. We can ride without a helmet if we want. And you know, our response is, yeah, you can ride on your own land all day long, but you cannot expect to put other people at liability because you won't follow a simple rule. So that is something that we do, and it is now completely accepted and not a problem. Insurance. This is a little different. We actually do provide insurance for our landowners. We have a policy of $2 million liability coverage, and they are each a named insured. Most, in fact, all of the landowner systems, landowner-only systems here do not provide that. I think it's probably a little unusual to provide it, but you should look into it anyway. Ours is not that expensive. It's runs us about $25,000 a year, which is about, it's a good hunk of our budget, but we feel it's important. And I think it's been very, very, it's been very instrumental in keeping some wavering landowners. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, why the release is strong, because again, I could talk about this all night. But you've got this here, and please look at it. Again, if you'd like a copy of that release or our rules or anything else that we put out, I'd be happy to have that sent to you. Let's see. Okay. Another issue that we have, privacy and compatibility of use. The landowner, you need to talk to the landowner, be friendly and appreciative, and ask their permission when, no matter what kind of system you're looking at, even if it's, you know, even if you're not even ready to start a system, it's really important to develop those relationships. You need to find out their expectations. We have I think we have 189 landowners now. I think I gave you the wrong number. That's what we started with. We have 189 landowners now, and they run the gamut from people who could care less what you do, go have a ball, don't have to ask us. If you want to cut down a tree, have at it. If you want to build jumps, go ahead. They're fine. Then we have people who, if you were to trim a little branch off, they would be upset. You need to know what each of those people care about. and what their expectations are. It's their land, so you really pretty much have to do what makes them happy. Respecting them goes 9/10 of the way to solving almost any problems with landowners. That's been my experience. So if you resolve their problems, for example, let's say they decide to build a swimming pool in the back of their house and your trail's coming too close to it for privacy, they're reasonable to ask you if you can move the trail. And we've moved trails before. It's not that big a deal. You know, it's their land, so that's what we do. Development and commercial use solutions. Let me spend a minute on that. Those can be hard, but they are certainly possible. With developments, usually it's so late by the time anybody who's not organized gets involved in it that it's hard to make changes. But if you go to these people early, especially if they are basically marketing that they live, you know, that they're in this rural area and the quality of life and all those sorts of things, we've been very successful in either having trails go through the developments or reroute around them, or even, you know, sometimes the developers have said, hey, you know, maybe I should rethink putting one house on 2 acres. Maybe we should make some of these horse farms. And you know, if you go and talk to them, sometimes you can have some real input. Commercial use, same thing. A lot of times those people are very happy to let you use it, but they don't want you to use it while they're building big commercial buildings or that sort of thing. These are hard, but not impossible. And again, you have to go into it with the attitude that this is your land and we really appreciate being able to use it, and what can we do to work together so that you know, that this wonderful horse culture that we have in this area can continue. I don't mean to minimize problems. I know that there are a lot of places out there that have a lot of problems, but working with an organized group where there's you know, there's some sort of structure and there's some sort of way of communicating to the riders as a whole, as opposed to 400 riders, often is the tipping point in talking to people that own this land, because they don't want to have to be dealing with 400 people, but they're much more willing if they think that you're organized and you've got your stuff together. The other thing is multi-use compatibility issues, and a lot of times that is, what does the landowner want to use their trail for? And our position has been, you use your trail for anything you want, but we ask you not to use it, not to allow other people to use it for incompatible things. That doesn't always work, and there's a lot of trail systems that have multi-use trails. That's not what we have done down here, but I can, there are quite a number of successful trail systems that do that. So if you look like, it seems like you're going to have multi-use compatibility problems. People are, you know, using these trails for lots of things, including things that are difficult, like mountain biking, then you might want to check out some of these other trail systems that have that taken care of. I'm thinking of Essex in Massachusetts. They have quite a number of different uses. What we found is our landowners don't want that. They do not want everyone using their trails. They're happy for the horses to use the trails, and usually they allow their neighbors to walk their dogs or run. Sometimes they let the track team run, but they don't want motorized vehicles. They don't want random people that they can't have any confidence have been vetted, or that anybody is making sure that they do what they're supposed to do. And that's one of the biggest advantages that we have. If they've got a problem, they've got a one-stop solution, and that is our trail system leaders. And they know, because we've established credibility, that those leaders will fix the problem. And if that means kicking somebody out of the trail system, well, we've done that. Funny story, we had one problem child, and that problem child kept doing stuff for a while, and after a while they got kicked out, and boy, we didn't have any more problems for a long time after that. It's a shame, but there are going to be out of 100%, you're going to have 95% people that are terrific and 5% of the people that cause all of your headaches. And I think that's probably true in life general. Other expectations that go to impact on the landowner. Who's going to maintain the trail? Who's going to be responsible for litter, fallen trees, damage, that kind of stuff? You need to decide on that and figure out how you're going to fix it. Interference with their life. Are you going to, are you going to impose on them, or are you not going to be seen? Are you going to create noise? Are their animals going to get all freaked out? Rider behavior. I mean, ride friendly is one of our mottos, because it's amazing how many landowners do not feel that they're appreciated because the riders ignore them. So these are the kind of things you want to you want to talk about and make these decisions. And the way that we've dealt with these over the years is to come up with a set of rules that really are the golden rule expanded. Unfortunately, the golden rule wasn't specific enough, and we needed to spell some things out and make sure that there was some accountability. I mean, you wouldn't think you would have to tell somebody that they can't take their horse and go camping and next to the pond and light a fire and take the boat out, but apparently you do. You wouldn't think you'd have to tell people that they can't go in and pick people's fruit and flowers, but apparently you do. So you just have to expect that you're going to have to be specific, and you're going to have to be, nobody likes rules, but it creates so much havoc when you're not clear about what the expectations are. One of the biggest problems that we had at the beginning of and almost broke the trail system apart was riding with dogs. People love to ride with their dogs. I love to ride with my dogs. But there's a lot of people who have cats who don't like to see their cat chased up a tree because the dog, is not on a leash and doesn't obey commands, and doesn't like their dogs getting in fight with the dogs that come along with you. There's a whole lot of problems associated with riding with dogs. And so we just had to say, that's it. Leave your dogs home. That's just the way it is. Riding when the trails are wet are another big problem. And that's a problem everywhere. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for the horses. It creates potential for accidents. So we close the trails when the conditions are not good. That takes a little bit of time and effort, but people get it now. They understand that they can't just go and tear through wet trails, that then the landowners are walking in big muddy horse prints, and they're not happy. Riding at night, a lot of people ride at night. That really spooks a lot of landowners. They do not like that. Don't use their things. Again, we have good rules. They're not 15 pages long. There's one page. If you want a copy of them, they've worked for us pretty well. It's been a hit and miss trial of an error kind of thing, and I think we've got them pretty well in good shape. So I'm happy to share those with you if you'd like them. You do have to enforce them fairly and consistently. If you allow people to have special treatment, you might have recreational use statute problems, because that person might then become a private invitee instead of just a member of the trail association and general public. And by the way, for recreational use statute, you don't have to have everybody on your property for everything, but it can't just be your friends. It has to be some sort of way that people that you don't know can join the trail system. And it's not just landowners, and it's not just people that you know. Okay, so just to recap, recruiting and keeping landowners, you have to treat them like gold. You have to develop personal relationships. They're always right. Engage them and make them your trail advocates. That really actually works for a lot of people. They really enjoy being part of this. Anticipate their problems and try and deal with problems you know are going to be there. If you go out riding and you see there's a big problem, be proactive and try and get it fixed. Be accountable. That's really, really important, especially if you're just starting a new trail system. Then that goes back to your leadership. You need people that will follow up, people who will take their issues seriously, people who are accountable and can build trust with these landowners. Protect them as much as you can and say thank you every chance you get. Okay, another issue are financial considerations. Division of expense depends on the kind of system that you have. Sometimes people just pitch in, help keep the trails open, and that's how our trail system started too. But that gets old after a while. It's something that you can try, but it usually ends up devolving on the backs of a very small number of people who usually end up getting upset about that, and often it creates a lot of trouble. Your best bet is to set your dues at a reasonable maintenance cost and find people to help you with hard stuff like cutting up big trees and helping on erosion control. Those are the kinds of things that everybody who uses it really ought to be chipping in for. It shouldn't fall on the backs of just a few people who then won't have enough time to go riding anyway. So that is an issue that you really pretty much have to talk through as you're starting to decide what kind of an organization you want to be. How do we want to pay for this? And what are we going to pay for versus what the landowner's going to pay for? Just to let you know, the landowners in our system are supposed to maintain their own trails, and most of them do. Some of them go away for 6 months at a time. Others of them have a lot of usage because they are near parking areas. So there's, until it funnels off into the bigger system, they get a lot of usage. So there's a lot of erosion issues that have to be fixed. We take care of those things for them because that's above and beyond what we would reasonably expect. That said, we have a lot of big landowners who are like, nope, we will take care of everything. God bless them, but you need to appreciate that, because that's really quite a remarkable degree of commitment. Affordability and access. Now, this gets back to whether you're going to be a landowner-only system or you're going to be a public system. A lot depends on your philosophy, the philosophy of your equine subdivision. If you're happy staying in your defined area and you can afford $1,000 a year, then that's great. That's not really the case for a lot of people in our area. We try and make sure that our trail system is very affordable because that promotes engagement and discourages trespassing. You need to, people, if they see trails, they're going to ride. You got to make it so that it's easier and more beneficial to them to join than it is for them to trespass, because you just don't have a whole lot of options rather than trespass laws, and most landowners are not excited about prosecuting people for trespassing. So the more affordable you make this, the more buy-in you're going to get, the more people you're going to have that you can spread the costs over and spread the work over. Even though we have 600 tags out, I can ride 3 hours and never see a soul. I very rarely see anyone when I ride, and I live in probably the most popular part of the trail system. So it sounds like a lot of people, but honestly, we'd rather have more people riding, because then we can know where the problems are. We have numerous miles of trails that very few people ever go on. And it'd be nice to have more reporting back of where there may be potential problems. Okay, liability considerations. Just remember your dues should be for a period of time, not based on the amount of riding. And keep them at the approximate cost of maintaining the system. If you would like to be under the recreational use statute, which says there's no compensation or consideration paid, and but does allow the expense of maintaining the trail. So that's again, that's pretty complicated, but it's something you want to keep in mind. If you don't want to have this looking like it is paying for a particular use. You want it to look like you are joining a system that has multiple benefits, including whatever amount of riding the person wants to do. We have people who have joined who come here for a month a year, people who ride every day, people who rarely ride, just want to just want to be part of it. We have several social occasions every year, a newsletter. So you're not paying your dues just to ride. And that's very important for liability. Okay, seeking permanent protection is really outside of the scope of this, but it's important to consider it at the beginning. And I would be very careful about pushing it or requiring it. That will get landowners backs up. You need to develop the relationship first and gain credibility and trust before you start discussing that. The other issue is, if you are wanting to do that, make sure that the landowners who are leaders in your organization protect their trails before they ask anybody else to. That is something that we made the mistake of not doing, and that came back and bit us a little bit. Remember, you don't have a whole lot of bargaining power. If a landowner wants to block the trail, what are you going to do about it? So even though you have an easement, and I'm in favor of easements, I've spent a lot of time getting easements, you still have to realize the practicalities of it is that you need to keep this relationship a good one, or if they block the trail, there's not a lot you're going to really be able to do. There's a lot of information on this at the ELCR website, so please look at that. The staff are happy to answer any questions that you have and make referrals. They're really, really good at that. So be sure you ask them specific questions, and they will refer it to people that have expertise. So I'd like to leave some time here for questions. I just want to make sure that we understand that you want to organize for success, and organize trail system, while it can be very time consuming and a little frustrating, a lot of work, it can also create a real bond between neighbors and horsemen. It can enhance the property values on your trail system. It can protect access to land, which protects your quality of life and the culture of the area. It can enhance your quality of life and the quality of life of the landowners. If you talk to the landowners who don't ride, they are almost universally supportive of our trail system. That hasn't always been the case, but it's been a relationship developed over the course of years. And you can create a community asset that'll attract like-minded people to the area. When you talk to people about why they live here, why they've moved here, if they're horse people, it's 9 times out of 10 because of the trail system. And that started, that started a while ago, but it can be done in a lot of places, and I want to encourage people to try and look at that and not be discouraged by what seems like insurmountable problems. So that said, if there are any questions, I'm not seeing questions on the screen.
We actually do have some questions in the Q&A. So in your menu for you, it's up at the top. You should be able to see a button for Q&A.
Well, here we go. There we go. Okay, well, all righty. I'm sorry, I asked for people to do this all along and I didn't see them come up on my screen. Okay, let me read a few of these. We have somebody from the Catskill Mountains. New York City is buying up thousands of acres to protect their watershed. They are prohibiting horses on the land, but it's okay to fish, hunt, hike, snowmobile, and have dogs there. The acres they buy often have small trails crossing them that were previously unobstructed for trail riding. Okay, I'm not going to allow horses on the land. You know, I think that there is a lot of information that might be able to help you. Unfortunately, I don't have any experience in public land, but we do have some ELCR directors that who have held high positions in public land management, and I think they might be able to help you. So Holly, if you take that question, maybe answer that by text, that would be helpful.
Sure. Darcy could even contact us because we could work with them and help them on this. We just have to, there'd be a lot of questions we would have to ask to give them some advice to make it more clear for us.
Okay, that's great.
So definitely have her contact us.
Okay, Darcy, if you would do that, I think they can help you, but it's outside my scope of expertise. Another question, Barbara, can mountain biking be compatible? Bikers are very supportive of trails. In our area, no. It's very hilly, it's rocky, and the bikers have the feeling of the landowners here is that there's lots and lots of biking in public places, and a lot of the horses have been sort of driven off because biking has caused an awful lot of accidents. Since this is an equine area, we really discourage it because we cannot afford to have serious accidents. If we have serious accidents, we get very spooked landowners and we lose the trails. I'm very supportive of mountain biking, but it's not something we do here. That said, there are a number of trail associations that do allow that. I'd refer you to Essex Trail System in Massachusetts, which is one that is completely multi-use. From talking to people in the area of public use, public trails, they're sort of rethinking that because of the problems they've had. And so I really would, again, refer you to the ELCR people because they can help you more with that. We own land, we like to preserve it for others. Pat asks, this doesn't really pertain to us. We don't want to ride on other people's land. We own the land and we'd like it preserved for others. We are riders and have 1,300 acres in northern South Carolina. We'd like to continue this multi-use, non-motorized. That's what we basically have, is multi-use, non-motorized, non-bicycle, but virtually everything else. We work with the local land trust and been speaking with major universities that have equine programs as well as agricultural forestry. We have an excellent release. The future prospect of equine is still undefined. Do you have any advice for people who we should speak to help us shape the future? Oh yes, absolutely. I would have advice about that. I, especially in northern South Carolina, we've actually been helping some people in northern South Carolina on this very issue. And if you would like to private message me, I can probably put you together with some people that can help you. And that's very laudable, and really appreciate you as a landowner for being willing to do that. Okay, Barbara, how could you possibly increase the chance of new landowners won't close the land to riding and hunting? Again, you have to develop a relationship with each one of them. You know, it's their land. You can't stop them from doing it. Even what an easement will do is get you a seat at the table where you can and put them on record, on notice that that there are horse trails in the area and those horse trails have rights. But again, you really need to talk to them, explain to them. Most of their problems are going to be liability with the horses, and that you have to go back and find out what the legal situation is so you can have an intelligent conversation with them about what there is. If you can do recreational use statute, that should really help them quite a lot in that regard. Anonymous, another question to ask if you don't have an equine activity law is what protection the state's case law can offer. Okay, well we could spend a long time on that too. Tort law requires a finding of negligence. If the person hasn't done anything negligent, they're not going to be held responsible. The problem is that they will have to go through a lawsuit to find that out, and that makes it really difficult. The very, very best thing you can do is have riders execute good releases in favor of the landowners. And if they do that, then the judge can throw the case out and saying, you signed this release, this person does not have any legal responsibility to you. So that is case law. So, the lawyer, the equine lawyer, will know the case law in your area, will know what the problems are, what the issues, what cases have come down. I've read hundreds of cases, and it's amazing the stupid things that people sue about. But by and large, if there hasn't been any intentional or negligent behavior, the landowners have not been found, to be liable. So there generally is case law that's protective, but the recreational use statute, I think, has been adopted in almost every state, and that's where I would start. Barbara asks how you could proactively increase the chance that new landowners won't. Oh, I'm sorry, I read that one already. This is jumping around a little bit. And Duke asks, why limit the number of members? That's a really good question. When our Trail Association first started, we didn't have a limit on the number of members, and it got so big that it was really unsustainable, more from a landowner comfort standpoint than anything else. That just, when they started seeing these real high number, they started really getting, oh my gosh, there's just too many people, and they're seeing too much erosion on their property and that sort of thing. That's become less of a problem over the years. When we had to close our trail system numbers, we did it based on our area. So our area includes, our local community is basically 3 counties, Polk County, North Carolina, and Spartanburg and Greenville County, South Carolina. And anybody who lives and anybody who lives within this community, not the whole counties there's Campobello, Landrum, a couple defined areas in the upper portions of those counties. If you live in those defined areas, you can join the feeded trail system. That is thousands and thousands of potential members. So that would pass the public sniff test. It is not just our landowners, it's all of these people. That made the landowners a lot more comfortable. We really would not feel comfortable with more than probably 500 member units, which is a family, which could have numerous people involved. Because that, when you get to be too big, then it becomes really a non-volunteer type of job. I mean, our system is run entirely by volunteers except for one part-time paid trail maintainer. And if you get too big for anybody to be handling this, then you're talking about big expense. So that is why I would say that you want to have that, and it makes the landowners feel a lot more comfortable that this isn't something that, everybody under the sun can come and do. Also, you have to be able to regulate usage. I mean, you have to be able to know that these people are members, they wear tags. You can't let a lot of trespassers in because they haven't signed the liability releases, and that's not fair to your landowners. That's part of the expectation. I hope I've answered that question. Debbie asks, are there any national equine trail associations that have local chapters that support state conservation and town trails? Do they help with insurance? I'm looking for ways to develop more organized equine clubs to help with trail. I would say Backcountry Horsemen of America probably would be one of those. ELCR has a number of partners that might be a model for what you're looking for. In terms of, there's a very big difference between East Coast, West Coast, North, South. I think there's probably more town trails out west, you know, people bringing their horses into town, tying them up. There's a couple of really good organizations in North and South Carolina and Aiken and Southern Pines that are big pieces of property that have been put in conservation and are organized as trails, you know, as trail organizations, and you might want to look at them as models. Okay, Sherry has from Oconee County, South Carolina. How can we ride the FIDA or CETA trails? We often are there for 100 paces and would love to have more opportunities. Well, unfortunately, you're not in this local area, so you can't join FIDA, which is the open membership, and CETA is landowner only. So I'm afraid there are not many opportunities. You can't join. That said, there's a lot of 100 paces on both of those properties, and if you get to know people in the area, most people are very happy to have you come and ride with them. So unfortunately, since we can't open it to everybody, we've had to make it to our community, which is a pretty large number of people. And really, that's a very practical way of going. But I wish we could do. I really wish we could do more. I could offer you more, but that's not the way our trail system, either of those trail systems operate. I think that's the last question. Gwen?
Yes, and
Yes.
We're at 8 o'clock. So if you would like to go ahead and forward the slide and to the next page in the PowerPoint.
Okay.
We can see if any more questions come in, but I'll give a couple of wrap-up things here.
Here we go.
All right. So perfect. So first of all, I want to thank Dorothy and Holly for speaking with us this evening, and everyone from the Equine Land Conservation Resource. Really appreciate working with you. And we also appreciate you that have attended this evening. And we have a little survey, a very short survey. It shouldn't take you too long to do it, but we would love to get some feedback from you. I'm going to go ahead and post the URL to this in chat. So there we go. I just put it in the chat. It should show up in the top left corner of your screen. And you can click on that link to go ahead and go to the survey. We'll also send you a follow-up email within the next 2 days. And in that email, you will get a link to the recording from this evening. And also, once again, we'll include the link to the survey as well. But the feedback really helps us just to better serve you, gives us ideas for new topics and so forth. So we really appreciate that. Next slide, please. And also just wanted to mention that for more information on My Horse University, you can email us at info@myhorseuniversity.com or go to our website, which is just www.myhorseuniversity.com. And you can also check out eextension.org/horses as well. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and have a lot of videos on YouTube as well. So we have a lot of free resources available to you, as well as some fee-based online courses. And as I mentioned at the beginning, just in case for any of you that may have missed it, when I send out the follow-up email with the link to the recording, we'll also be sending you a coupon code that you can use to access our Trail Riding 101 course for free. So we will give you that for free just for signing up for our webinar this evening. And with that, it doesn't look like we have any more questions. So I think we are all set for this evening. And once again, thank you, Dorothy, for speaking with us. And thank you to everyone who attended this evening.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it.